Hello. Welcome to the March Hangout. I'm here. It's a slightly different backdrop, as you can probably tell. In fact, I want to put my light on. You can tell I'm a little bit all over the place. So I've repositioned my desk because, quite frankly, my office space looks really, really bare at the moment. We've taken down pictures and mirrors and yeah, this is the pretty part behind me at the moment. And the sofa where I usually film will stay like that until we leave, just to give me some kind of peace. Because I don't know about you, if you've moved recently or you remember the last time you moved, it kind of feels like you strip away your personality when you move. And I kind of feel like this office studio space is that at the moment. So, yes, anyway, how are you? I hope you are all doing really, really well. Um, I wanted to start today actually by just going through some kind of updates with me. And then I'm going to be talking a bit later on about what I would do differently if I were moving to Italy now, because I've learned a lot in nearly 7 years and I would really love it if people didn't make some of the same mistakes that I did kind of back in 2018. So, in terms of my news, we have just 2 more weeks left here in Palermo before we move, which means that my posting schedule is going to be maybe a little bit all over the place for the next couple of weeks. I'm planning to batch create my content so that it doesn't affect my posting schedule in terms of my long form videos. So, like on a Wednesday and on a Sunday. But when it comes to my shorts, where I've been doing shorts on like pretty much all the other days, some weeks you may see less shorts just because I just don't have the mental bandwidth in this time to stick to the normal posting schedule. And it's funny because I'm really, really kind of traditional when it comes to planning out my content. I've even got like a calendar, which you can see here, which I write everything down on and then I tick it off. This was last week, and I circle the content I didn't manage to do in that week so I know I can use it again. So yeah, I'm pretty organized. I'm a double Virgo, so this is why. But yeah, so for this reason, I think I just have to be a bit kinder to myself. Moving home is stressful. We've got quite a few things still to finalize, and I really want to put my focus on that. So there may be some less shorts over the next 2 weeks, but there will definitely still be the regular videos, my check-ins with you, and your behind the scenes video for March. If you missed it, is going to be a 2-part special in April, because realistically, I don't have the ability to film an extra video this month on top of everything else that I'm doing with the move. So I decided that I'm going to document the last week that we have here in Palermo, the day of the move, the trip on the boat, arriving in our new house, all that kind of stuff. I'm actually going to document it and do a 2-part behind the scenes video for you all in April. So it's the only time that I envisage this happening. All the rest of the times you will have an extra behind the scenes video every month, but I've got to be realistic. My mind is very full up at the moment. So I prefer to do 2 kind of really behind the scenes takes on my move, 2 videos like that, rather than trying to do kind of a video that wouldn't really be very useful for you in March itself. So that's kind of what's happening with my content for the next couple of weeks. Expats in Bloom, my expat community that I've mentioned a few times in some other hangouts that I've had. It's coming, but it will be launching after I've moved. So at the moment, I've just been gaining interest on like a wait list, which, by the way, if you've not done so, take a little look, because I think you'll really, really be interested in what I'm creating. But the launch will happen post move, obviously. So it's happening, but it won't be happening anytime before the end of April. So yes, just to give you an update about that. So that's kind of like my news at the moment. We are getting there with our move. Everything is pretty much boxed apart from the really big pieces that the movers will take care of for us. We have 2 more weekends left here in Palermo. It feels really strange because next week we're going to go down to the last Tuesday in Palermo, the last Wednesday in Palermo, the last Thursday. But, you know, it's for the best. So I'm happy about that. Okay, so today I wanted to talk to you about what I would do differently if I were moving to Italy now, because nearly 7 years ago, when I made the decision to move to Italy, I was pretty naive. I can be honest enough to say that, because I came here. If you don't know my backstory, I came to Italy for the very first time in August 2017. I didn't even realize that August was such a dead month in Italy at that time. And that was probably the reason why we got such a great deal on our holiday. But yeah, I came in August 2017. I stayed in a place near Sorrento, and I kind of went on excursions around the Amalfi and in that area. And I loved Italy from that moment. And even when I returned back to the UK, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to live in Italy, even though it was completely bonkers. I had my own business, I had a life back in the UK. It was just a feeling and I couldn't shake it. And after that, I came back to Naples to spend another weekend. It was fairly close to the Amalfi, but just to give me a flavor of what it could be like in a neighboring city. And then I was like, yeah, I want to do this. And I basically started planning my move. Now, do I regret any of that? Absolutely not, because I don't think I would be sitting here now had I not been crazy enough or bold enough to do that in the first place. However, would I recommend that you do the same thing? Maybe not. I think the first thing that I would do differently if I were moving to Italy now would be that I would do better research. In fact, I would just do research, because that's something I didn't do. I went with a gut feeling, this inner intuition, but it's not practical. If you're planning to build a life here, you do need to kind of know what it is you're letting yourself in for. So if I were moving to Italy now, I would be utilizing the internet and all the wonderful free resources that are available. YouTube. I don't even know why YouTube didn't cross my mind, like back in late 2017, early 2018. I didn't even think about looking at videos of people who actually live in Italy. It didn't even enter my mind. And I've no idea why, because that would have actually been a really, really good thing to do. But, you know this because you are on YouTube now. You are a member of my channel. You watch my content, and no doubt you watch other creators as well. So you already know just how important this is. But I really think I cannot understand why I didn't do this. But make sure that you continue to do this if you're planning to move to Italy. And I think it's always interesting to listen to creators who live in different parts of Italy as well, because something that you need to understand is the structure and history of this country. It's so complicated here, and life is so different from one city to one region to one town to the next. And so sometimes when you pay attention to what different creators are talking about who live in different parts of Italy, I think you get a better understanding of what this country is really like. So there is a lot of goodness that you can find just by utilizing YouTube, and also just the internet in general. I think, lots of websites have blog posts about what life is like in Italy. I'm going to say, be diligent if you decide to go onto some websites or into some expat communities, because some of them are run like businesses. And I really got a bit wise to that the longer I've spent living here in Italy, because I remember, I think it was when I started my YouTube channel in 2021, I remember an admin from one of these expat communities approaching me and sort of telling me that I could pay them to talk about, what I'm doing on my channel, and they would promote me as like this, resource to use about life in Italy. And I didn't really like that. And I think that was when I had my eyes really opened when it comes to expat communities. They're not necessarily as genuine as they seem. The services that they represent, the companies they talk about, may just be because they have paid for that privilege and not necessarily because they are the best people to use. So just be really wary about expat communities and some online expat websites, because sometimes money talks more than quality. And I just think you have to just be careful around that. Um, when it comes to your research, I really think it's good to kind of collate everything together, even if it's like a Google Docs form or a good old fashioned journal, whatever it is, but really collate everything down and write down what you are doing and how you are feeling. I have a journal in my memory box that I started in late 2017, documenting my entire process of moving to Italy. And it literally said, I can't remember what the cover of this book was, but it was fantastic. It was something like "Make Your Dream a Reality" or something like this. And I remember I started writing in this book in the UK, and I actually took a picture of me holding that very same journal the day I moved to Italy, in Italy itself. And that's how powerful like scripting, writing, doing all of this kind of stuff is. But it's also really wonderful to look back on later on. Like I've reread that, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And it was just really wonderful to kind of understand how I was feeling and tap back into that energy and excitement that I had and trepidation at points. So don't kind of overlook this process. Journaling, writing things down, it can be a really good way not only to process how you're feeling, but also to look back on later on to remember just what you've done and why you decided to do it as well, most importantly. And this kind of links into the second thing that I would do differently if I were moving to Italy now. I would list my non negotiables. This is super important because each and every one of you who decides to move to Italy have your own unique reasons for doing so. And no two people's reasons for wanting to move here will be the same. My reason for wanting to move to Italy was because I wanted to find happiness again. I wanted to know what it was like to live again, because I had spent 10 years of my life up to that point in really demanding jobs. I was a police officer for 6 years. I had my own business for 4 years. And those two kind of career paths were extremely demanding, which meant that I was just working and not living. And I wanted to change. And so that was my reason for moving here. But you see, my reason is going to be very different to your reason. And that's why I think it's really important that you are super clear on what is important to you when it comes to moving to Italy. And especially so if you have particular needs. So if you're planning to retire here, which I know some people on my channel who watch my channel are, you've got to be realistic about the areas you're interested in moving to. Because if you don't want to drive, you need to have access to public transport unless you're happy to just always stay in that particular town or village. You've also got to think about the community. If you're moving as a family, where do you want to be based? Do you want to live in a tranquil environment in the countryside or the suburbs, or are you happy to be in the bustling city? Do you want to be in a community where there are other families so that you have the potential to build your connections? Or are you happy to, be somewhere a bit more remote? And then you've got to think about schools as well. Like especially if you're moving here as a family, what are the schools like in the areas that you're interested in? And also, are you planning to educate your children privately or using the state school system here? Like there are so many things that you have to consider depending on your individual circumstances. So this is why your non-negotiables are super, super important, because they are going to help you to narrow down where in Italy is best for you, but also like even cities, towns, accommodation. It's going to make you clearer, even more so, on what you should be doing here and, where in Italy exactly you should consider moving too. So don't discredit that. Non-negotiables are super, super important. And so many people don't think about this. They get lost in the dreamy romanticism of this country, but you need your non-negotiables and be realistic about them as well. Like, this is why I tell you, do your research, do better research than I did, because your non-negotiables will be based on the research that you do. For example, if your non-negotiable is that you want to live somewhere where the summers aren't too hot, well, you're definitely not going to want to move to Sicily, because Sicily, you can expect averages of 40 degrees most summers. So, do good research, and then you'll be able to make better decisions later on, and it will help you to form better non-negotiables, which essentially are going to mean that you don't waste chunks of your time looking at places that are just not going to be suitable for you and your individual circumstances. Number 3, something that I would have done differently if I were moving to Italy now, I would learn the language and I would start studying it from before I moved here. I speak about this so much because this was undoubtedly one of my biggest regrets. I moved here with, wow, such naivety. I really believed that I could get by with the limited English that I spoke. At that point, I'd never lived in any other country before. Of course, I'd traveled, I'd been to other countries on holiday. And, when you go on holiday, you meet other English speakers, but that's not real life. That's not your everyday experience. And so when I moved here, I was literally like, oh my goodness, I don't understand anything. And it really stripped away my confidence. I found the first couple of years particularly difficult. So I would definitely start studying the language as soon as you can. In my opinion, it's never too early to begin learning. And I don't believe either that you have to buy every single study book or kind of do every single course that's available on the internet. Less is more, because I think there is a paradox. I saw this on Instagram the other day and I can't remember what it was, but it's the choice paradox, I think it is, where essentially if you have too much choice, you end up feeling overwhelmed. And it's exactly the same with language learning. If you have too many different resources, you feel overwhelmed and you don't know where to begin or what to use first. So really and truly, try to narrow down the resources that you use for language learning. Try to cover the 4 key areas that you need to focus on. So reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So the core language pillars. And try to find different resources that can match that, but don't go overboard, because there are hundreds of Instagram accounts, hundreds of YouTube channels that will teach you Italian, but you just need to find the channels that work with you. So for example, on YouTube, I watch the channel Learn Italian with Lucrezia, and I really love her videos. In fact, I bought her study book. So she released a study book a few months ago, and it's fantastic. I haven't got it here to show you because it's already been packed away in a box, but it is a brilliant, brilliant study book. But I really like her. I like her method. I like the way that she speaks and the topics that she talks about. And she also does some videos in English as well. So I like that too, because I feel like I can follow along better. So you just need to find the people that you really enjoy listening to, watching on all of the different platforms that are available to you. Avoid shiny object syndrome. This is something I was very guilty of. I literally bought every study book that I could find when it came to learning Italian, because I was like, oh gosh, no, this book is boring. This book is going to be better. No, wait, this one, look, there's illustrations. This one is going to be so much better than the last one. And I ended up with this collection of Italian study material, of which I've probably only ever used 2 or 3 of those books. So yes, avoid shiny object syndrome. It is not the book that is going to help you learn the language. It is you, and it is your motivation and your dedication. I will say, though, that Um, Italian study books are pretty dull. Like, I teach English here in Italy, and the study books for English are really interesting. Like, there's illustrations and pictures, and they're fun to use. But the Italian material, unfortunately, isn't so. I mean, this is why I liked the book that Lucrezia produced, because it is similar to the study material books that I use with my students here who are learning English. So it's this, like, you've got to find what works for you, and you've got to tap into your learning style. Some people are visual learners, so you learn better through images and through like mind maps and things that can help you to better remember what it is you're learning. Other people prefer to read or to listen. So you've got to understand what you prefer to do. But essentially, the language is so important. I really want to spend time talking about this because it was the number one thing that made my kind of initial period here so difficult. And now I think, nearly 7 years in, I feel a lot more comfortable. I'm watching a lot more television shows in Italian now, and I can understand a lot of what people are saying. I've got to work on my speaking more, which is kind of my next goal after we've moved. But it's this, isn't it? Like, you have to prioritize language learning. And I want to also say, because this is a big mistake that I see a lot of my English students here in Italy make, is that they think that they have to spend a very, very long time studying. So a lot of students will be like, I've got to find an hour every single day or a couple of times a week to study. But we all know that, that's probably never going to happen unless you don't work or you have, unlimited free time. To find a whole hour in a day to study alongside work and family commitments, I think is probably a little bit unrealistic. So I'm a big believer in consistency, and I'm a big believer in like small, consistent actions stacking up and helping you to achieve your results, which is why I believe that actually study periods should be no more than 15 or 30 minutes every single day. And if you can do that over the course of a week, you've made far better progress than somebody who's trying desperately to find like one solid hour. So that would be like my advice to you when it comes to language learning. And most importantly of all, like, avoid comparison. Like, for me, I have spent a lot of my time here in Italy stuck in the trap of comparison, especially when it comes to language learning. I would meet people here in Italy who, oh my goodness, they speak the language beautifully. They're fellow expats, and they've managed to grasp the language wonderfully. Or I would watch YouTube videos of people who can speak like 2 or 3 languages, and I'd be like, why am I struggling just to learn one? Don't do it, basically. Don't compare. We are all wired so differently, and our lives look so different to each other that you just cannot make that comparison. And if you do, you're going to block your own progress because we're not wired the same. We're completely different. So avoid comparison, and stick to your own path and kind of focus on your own progress. Find the materials that work for you, find the learning style that works for you, and focus in on that. But yes, don't do what I do. Definitely spend a lot more time focusing on the language. The next thing that I would have done differently if I were moving to Italy now is that I would have spent more time in Italy before moving. Now, if you don't know, my move to Italy was pretty quick. It was around 8 months from making the initial decision to move to actually landing in Italy, stepping off the plane and starting my new life. So I think that's pretty rapid, because a lot of people, it takes them, maybe a year or more to really land on that kind of decision and make it happen. But I mean, I don't regret what I did. I think, I was motivated as well because I knew Brexit was on the horizon. So at the time when I made the decision to move here, Brexit had already been voted upon. It was going to happen really imminently. And so I knew that this was kind of like a now or never moment. If I didn't move now, it would be nigh on impossible to move again in the future as easily as it was back then. And so I was motivated by that. And that, I think, also helped me to move pretty quickly with this decision. But on the other hand, I think there is actually a really beautiful thing about being patient and taking your time and really trying to adjust to life here in small doses, rather than coming here for a couple of weeks and then being like, I'm moving here, and then immediately starting your life. Okay. I do think it takes you longer to adjust in this way. And I must admit as well, I think taking your time is something that I have learnt. The longer I spend living here in South Italy, especially, there is real beauty in not rushing things, in having this kind of piano mentality, and especially when it comes to moving to Italy, because Italy is super complicated. You all know this from my videos. I'm very real with all of you, but it is super, super complicated. And when you come here on holiday, you don't realize this. And when you start living here, you're like, geez, I never thought life would look like this. So if you can spend more time here, like, I don't know, it really depends on your personal circumstances, but if you can spend more consistent chunks of time here leading up to your move, I think it will help you to settle here easier than if you just like kind of jump head first into your new life like I did. So I think that's something that I would have done differently. Although I think, of course, as I said before, my decision was motivated by Brexit. That was the reason why I moved so quickly. So back then, I didn't really have any other choice. But I think if I were moving to Italy now and I didn't have Brexit on the horizon, I think I would have stepped back a little bit and kind of slowed down the process and just got to know this country a little bit more before jumping head first into life here. Something else that I would do differently if I were moving to Italy now is I would be really realistic about my future here. Now, the reason I say this is because it depends what kind of life stage you decide to move to Italy at. I was 34 when I moved to Italy, and for a lot of people at that age, they are kind of focused on their careers, or they're settled down with families. I'd had my career from quite early on. So I became a police officer when I was like 24 years old. So I was quite young at that point. But when I moved here, I wanted the reverse, because I'd had this really intense 10-year period of working and doing so much in that period that a lot of people may achieve in their entire lifetime. I wanted to have a bit of a slower life in that sense. But if you move here to Italy and you want to build a career and you want to kind of develop yourself in this way, you've got to get realistic, because especially here in the south of Italy, it's really tough, like really, really tough. Working conditions are not easy. And, I saw a comment on one of my videos the other day, and it was from somebody who was like, this isn't true. Like, I know lots of people in South Italy who get paid really well. Or I don't even know if they said, I know lots of people. I think they just said people get paid really well in South Italy. I have to look at the comment again. I can't remember it word for word, but it was something like people get paid really well. And, people can make a success of their lives there, blah, blah, blah. And I read the comment and I was like, well, it really does depend where in Italy you are. Maybe in the north of Italy, you can earn a better salary, but then everything is relative, because you generally pay a lot more for housing and transport and everything else in the north of Italy. So in the south of Italy, though, gosh, it's so difficult. So that we're moving because of my boyfriend's kind of work situation and how difficult he's found it here in Palermo. But I also know that other professions also find it really tough. So I'm a teacher, but there are teachers who teach at private schools and teachers who teach at state schools. Now, there are so many teachers who work in state schools or want to work in state schools, but they're blocked because here in Italy you have something called a concorso, which is like a public contest or competition, which they run to be able to select teachers for vacancies in schools around Italy. Now, I know people who have actually gone through this whole concorso process. It's so difficult and it's so pointless, in my opinion, because honestly, with these concursos, you can sometimes have thousands of people applying for what could only be 3 or 4 positions. It is really, really cutthroat and really difficult. Like, I've even given lessons to Italian students who want to become teachers, and they will have part of their concorso in English, but they have no idea what it's going to be about. And some of the questions that they will be asked are often like general knowledge questions or things that are so irrelevant for the position that they're applying for. Like, it's super, super difficult, really and truly. And this is why I think, you've got to be realistic about your career options, because it is not easy to have a good career here in Italy working solely for an Italian company. If you work for a multinational company, maybe yes, you could have a better experience. But if you are working purely for an Italian company, it's not easy at all. And it's not easy to get your foot in the door. It's not easy on so many different levels. So I think I would be really realistic about what I want from my future if I were moving to Italy now. And also, especially if you're older as well, because, the dream of a lot of people is to retire here in Italy. And I think that on the one hand is a really beautiful thing. I've said it in other videos, but I actually think to retire in Italy is maybe the perfect kind of stage of life to come here. But it's not without its considerations, because you've got to think about your healthcare. You've got to think about, being away from your own family and friends if you have a problem, if you fall ill, if you need support. You've got to think about your pension as well. Like, is your pension going to get taxed as well here in Italy? Because guess what? The UK pension, unless it comes from a government body, actually gets taxed here in Italy. Like, it's crazy. And this is what I mean. Like, you've got to be so realistic about your future. Don't get lost in the dream. Don't get lost in all those television shows that want to tell you how incredible it is to retire here, to live here, whatever it may be. It can be, and it is a beautiful place. But you've got to set your expectations straight, and you've got to be clear as to what you see your life looking like, not just now in the honeymoon phase, which I spoke about in my latest video, which, by the way, has gone a little bit viral. I'm very happy about that. But also, like, you've got to think 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, especially if your goal is to move here on a long-term basis. How do you see your life mapping itself out all the way down the line? And it's difficult sometimes because, of course, we don't know what's going to be around the corner, what's going to happen to us. But I think when you live here in Italy, you do have to have a little bit of an idea, because you need to draw up contingencies. You have to have plan Bs. This is not the country that you're from necessarily. And so you need to know what you're going to do if things don't suddenly work the way that you thought they were, or you have a bit of an emergency situation. So this is something that I would have done differently. I would have sat down and I would have really thought maybe a bit more about how I see my future looking here. I kind of fell on my feet a bit, I think, personally, because I knew that teaching English was maybe the only option that I had here. Although I did have an interview at a cruise ship company, and, I did very well with that interview, but realistically, without the Italian, I think it would have been super difficult. So, essentially teaching English was the most obvious choice for me back then. And, it's a great job, by the way. If you're planning to move to Italy and you want to work here, I do think teaching English, although some people go, oh, that's all everybody does who moves to Italy is teach English. Well, there's a demand for it. That's why. And actually, it's a great way to integrate into a community and to feel a bit more settled as well. And it's a great kind of way to get your foot in the door when it comes to experience and work, because as I've said in other videos, experience really is everything here in Italy. If you have experience, it often speaks more than your qualifications, depending on what it is that you do. So it's a really, really important thing to consider. I would also say, though, that, I think you just have to be realistic about your future, about the things that you want. Because I think if I got lucky because of the pandemic. So I had my teaching job. I was super lucky with that. But then the pandemic came along, and in a way, it helped me to think about starting this YouTube channel, because I don't know if I've said it in other videos. Maybe I did. I don't know. But a friend of mine back in the UK tried to encourage me to start a YouTube channel in late 2017 when I first started to have this idea of moving to Italy. And he was like, you'll be able to document the move. It will be great. And I wasn't ready at that point. Like, I was like, who wants to watch me? I didn't feel comfortable about being on camera. I didn't know what I'd talk about. I just wasn't ready. And it took me like, all that time until 2021 to be ready. And that moment came during the pandemic when I needed to have some kind of an outlet and a way to express myself. And so I fell on my feet in that sense. And so now I have this that keeps me busy, and this brand that I've created with Ms. Brittany, and then of course my teaching job. So I definitely got lucky, but you can't rely on luck when you move to Italy. You have to have a solid plan. It's super, super important. So set your expectations straight for how you see your future progressing. And I think it will help you a lot. I'm going to pause here for a moment and just say that if you have any questions that you want to ask me about, as always, living in Italy, life in Italy, put them into the chat and I will answer them when I can in this Hangout session. Also, I want to say before I forget, please tell me if there is a better time that you would like to have this Hangout session on. At the moment, I choose a Tuesday because I don't work on a Tuesday. And so for me, it's a day that I can be 100% sure that I'm free to do this Hangout. But I can also do it on a weekend if it's better for you. Also at different times. I choose this time because when I was looking at like the international calendars, because I know some of you live in other countries, I could see that maybe this hour worked. But if it doesn't, please tell me, because I'm really open to feedback. And so if you'd prefer this Hangout at a different time, please let me know. And also if you'd prefer it on a different day as well, please tell me. So yes, another thing, taking it back to what we're talking about today, that I would do differently if I were moving to Italy now is I would really focus on connections. I speak about this a lot, but I talk about this because these were some of the biggest mistakes that I made. When I moved here, so before I'd moved here, I'd done like a 4-week, I guess you'd call it a language exchange. I stayed with an Italian family. I helped their daughter to improve her English. In turn, they gave me a free accommodation, food. They showed me around Salerno, which is where my love for that city began. And I got to meet people through the daughter who I taught. It was a great experience, but because I'd had such a great experience with that family, I really believed that it would be easier for me to make connections when I returned, fully living here in Italy. But I was wrong, because this is the thing. And I think we forget this sometimes in our dreamy moment of moving to another country. We think we're going to have all these friends falling off our arms. It doesn't happen like this, because people here are busy and they have lives and they have commitments and they have families. And guess what? They already have their circle of friends. You are somebody extra. And I really think, as blunt as that sounds, it's so true. You will have to push yourself out of your comfort zone when you first move here. The people will not come to you. You are going to have to go to the people. Seek out those communities, those expat communities, even if you don't want to use them indefinitely, because I understand for a lot of people, after a while, they kind of want to be more with the locals rather than just expats, or they want to try and find a balance, because I think a balance is important, because not every expat community attracts local people. Some only attract expats. So at some point, you need to kind of be mixing with the locals as well. But it's so vital for connection. And, I struggled so much at the beginning because I hadn't thought about this enough. I'd thought it would be easier than it actually ended up being. And even though I had gotten to know some people through that family that I stayed with, it wasn't solid enough. And I really struggled to build connections. And it was when I discovered the expat group in Salerno that I found myself, and I started to build my own independent connections with people that I could communicate and understand with. But I will say that it's not impossible to make connections here. But again, it depends on your circumstances. If you're working here, you'll have the opportunity to make connections with your colleagues. If you have anything in common with them, of course, it's not a given that you will. If you have children and you send them to school here, then maybe you'll be able to make friends with the other families from the school. Like, if you retire here, maybe you can make friends with people in your community, depending on where you live, but it takes time. And I wish that I had really, really spent more time on this before I moved here and really started to consider what steps I would take to build my connections when I started living here. And I honestly think that's why I struggled so much at the beginning as well. Loneliness is real. Like, please don't underestimate how lonely and homesick you can feel at points here. I don't feel it anymore. And I think, it's funny, maybe because I've been here for like nearly 7 years, because I'm a lot more used to life here. I don't know, but I don't feel it anymore. But I went through a stage at the very beginning where I did. And it was very difficult for me. And, you know, I was very solid on my reason for living in Italy, but if I hadn't have been, maybe I would have taken the first plane back to London. So really and truly, with this in mind, make sure you spend time working on your connections as soon as you can. It is super, super important. And I cannot stress it enough. Like, really and truly work on your connections. It's something that I would have done differently if I were moving to Italy now. I wouldn't have waited until I arrived. I would have started before I even stepped on the plane. What else would I have done differently if I were moving to Italy now? I think I would have been a bit braver. Now, this sounds really, really strange, because if I've made the decision to move to Italy, of course, I must be quite brave, right? Considering that I didn't speak the language properly, I didn't really know many people here, and I'd only visited the country twice before. I would say that there's a degree of bravery contained within that. However, when I moved here, I did become quite timid in situations. A lot of it was because of the language difficulty. A lot of it was because I was trying to adjust to the new way of life, the culture, the way things were. And so I did find it hard at the very, very beginning, to put myself in social situations, to allow my personality to shine through, because I felt like I couldn't, because I was blocked with this, language inability. And I also found it difficult because I don't know, I felt strange. Like, and this is what I mean about how you have to be braver. And this is really important, because people will look at you differently here. Okay. So I'm going to say it like this. I've never had any problems with anyone here. I've never had anybody tell me to go back to London. That kind of stuff exists on the internet. I've never had that face to face. I've never been made to feel unwelcome here. In fact, it's been the complete opposite. People have been so accommodating and so kind to me. It's been a really, really wonderful experience in that way. However, I have felt like an outsider a lot of the time. And it's not because people have not been welcoming, because I've just said they've been perfectly fine with me. It's just because I notice that I'm so different to the people that live here. I notice that I have different beliefs. I have a different mindset. I have a different approach to life. I've had a different upbringing, a different background. And so, with this in mind, I naturally feel like I'm different and as a result, an outsider. And it can make you feel really timid in those moments to put yourself out there because you know that you're not the same as everybody else. And in a way, now I would do it so differently. I would just not care. And I think a lot of that has come through age, through experience, caring less what other people think. Because the problem is when you start caring what people think about you, you put yourself in a box and you stop yourself from making progress here in Italy. Like at the end of the day, the reality is people are more interested in their own lives than they are in you. And as hard as that might be to imagine sometimes, it really is true. Um, and we think people are more interested in us than they really, really are. So, yeah, this is it. I think I would be a lot braver. I would put myself more in social situations. I would speak more, even if I made mistakes, because I remember so many times where I would try to speak. You know, I'd have a moment of bravery. I'd be like, "Yes, I'm gonna speak." And this was like, you know, back at the very beginning when I'd just moved here, and I'd say a couple of words, and people would be like, what? Cosa?" Like they couldn't understand what I'd said. And I remember I would just immediately shut down and I'd be like, okay, don't worry, nothing yet. I can't speak. When actually, I wish now I'd just been like, no, this is the word I want to say, and actually continue trying to say the word until they understood what I was saying. That is bravery. That is not caring that the other person might have responded in a strange way to what you're saying. That is you trying to push yourself to improve and to get better and to not box yourself into this kind of space where you care too much about what people think about you. So be braver, okay? Don't do what I did at the beginning where you become timid and shy and you close down. Be brave. Don't worry about making mistakes. Don't worry about what people think about you. People are going to have an opinion about you, whatever you do. And, you know, I saw something really interesting the other day, and I'll share it with you here because I think you can relate. I follow a content creator called Jade Beeson. She is incredible. She teaches all about social media, and she's from London. And I remember I discovered her actually just before the pandemic. And it was really interesting. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's another Londoner on YouTube, which is crazy because, of course, there are lots of people from London who have YouTube channels. But at that moment, living in Italy for a couple of years, it was just incredible to hear a London accent again. So that's how I started following her. And then from then on, she's helped me a lot with what I do as well. But I will say that she's posted something the other day and she was like, not everyone likes birthday cake. She was like, you know, birthday cake with the thick icing and the sponge and the Madeira sponge and the jam and and you know the filling, the buttercream. I love birthday cake, by the way, like that traditional birthday cake. You can't get birthday cakes like that in Italy. They're like ice cream cakes or something similar. But anyway, that type of birthday cake, not everybody likes. Some people like that birthday cake and some people don't. And it's okay because not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody's going to get you. Not everybody's going to support you. But that is okay. And that's why I repeat that analogy here because don't spend your time here in Italy consumed by what other people think about you, consumed by the worries and concerns about your, you know, your perception. Just don't worry about it. Not everybody likes birthday cake. That's what I want you to remember instead. Like it's a great analogy. And I think as we move into the last part of this Hangout, by the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. I would say that I think the most important thing that you should do when you move to Italy is be kind to yourself. And it sounds really woo woo, really, yeah, whatever. Why am I watching this? Why do I have to be kind to myself? Because you're moving to another country and things are going to be tough. And I'm telling this to you with some tough love, but it's necessary. Don't believe the Instagram stories. Don't believe the hype on some YouTube channels where they want to romanticize the whole moving process and how magical and easy it might seem. It isn't like this at all. It's very difficult, I think, moving to Italy for lots of different reasons, predominantly because you have to get used to things being run in a completely different way to what you're used to, different bureaucracy, different systems, different pace of life. It's not easy at all. And so I really don't want you to come here and beat up on yourself because it's not the life that you expected. I mean, I would hope that if you have followed the tips that I have shared with you in today's Hangout, you will not make some of the mistakes that I did, and you will come here better prepared anyway, because it all starts from that research, right? At the very, very beginning of this Hangout I spoke about. However, you will find moments that are difficult here. And it could just be that the fact that somebody has taken bloody 3 months to respond to an email, which has happened to me. Or it could be the fact that you don't think people here are as genuine as you thought that they were. Fun fact, by the way, I was having a conversation with one of my English students the other day, who is Italian, of course, and he was saying that even he believes that a lot of the niceties that people have here, especially in the south of Italy, it's not genuine, it's not real. And I've had my suspicions about this for a while. I digress a little bit, but this is important for you to know. When I first moved here to the south of Italy, I was like, wow, everybody's so lovely. They're so warm. They're so friendly. They're so kind. But after a while, I started to think, how genuine is that? Because on an average day, how natural is it that you're going to be that happy, that enthusiastic, and that nice to every single person that you meet? We all have off days. We all have off moments. We all have days where we just can't bother to talk to anyone or anything. How genuine is that? Ciao, bello, ciao, come sai? Like, how genuine is all of that? And I've always believed that a lot of it is genuine, you can tell, but a lot of it isn't. And I think the longer you spend here, the better you become at detecting what is real and what isn't. But it's interesting that it wasn't just me that shared that opinion, but another Italian person also said it as well. But anyway, the point I'm trying to say is that you have to be kind to yourself, because not every experience here in Italy will be easy, will be as you thought it would be. So I want you to remember, most importantly of all, why you made this decision in the first place, why you decided to move to Italy. My why was my saving grace when I struggled through the pandemic, when I struggled with my loneliness, when I struggled adapting with my language. My why is what kept me grounded here in Italy. And it's what stopped me from changing my mind and going back to the UK. So make sure that you double down on your why. You are kind to yourself, but you also remember your why. Don't forget it. It's something that I have to be honest with you, I've not seen many people talk about on YouTube when it comes to moving to Italy. I've spoken about it a lot because I recognize just how important it really is. But I haven't seen many people talk about this, which is why, again, I want to stress the point and make sure you really understand. You must have a strong why. It's not enough to say you're coming here just for work. It's not enough to say that you're here because the weather's good or because the food is nice. Have something a bit more substantial, because if something goes wrong in any of those areas, like for example, you lose your job or you don't enjoy your work here, or you suddenly get irritated by the weather conditions because it's too difficult to live, you've got to have something deeper beneath that surface that is going to keep you here in this country. It's a big decision to move countries. You're not just going down the road, you're packing your home up, you're selling things, you're, maybe downgrading a little bit, downsizing in order to move more easily here to Italy. You're going to spend a lot of money in doing so. So you've got to make sure that you have a really strong reason to keep you here. And that's the way that I think I should kind of wrap up this Hangout session, really. Get really clear on your why. Don't forget it. And remember everything that I have spoken about in today's Hangout, because really, if I were moving to Italy now, I would do each and every one of the things that I have spoken to you about today, because they are so vital. And I really think people take it for granted that it's going to be easy to move to Italy, easy to adapt to life here. I don't think it is. I think it depends on you as a person, first and foremost. Like, don't get me wrong. I think, a lot of the experiences that I have are down to who I am as a person, my temperament, and the way that I view the world. And I'm very aware that my experience is not going to be your experience, and vice versa. Like I always say this, when I first moved here, people told me life here would be like A, and it ended up being like B. It was totally different. So understand this, like, you will have your own experiences. Absolutely. It all depends on you as a person, but you will find challenges here. I could place a bet now and say that at some point on your journey, you're going to encounter a challenge. This is real life. So if you followed the steps that I've spoken about, I really think you're going to find it easier to navigate life here in Italy. And so I hope that this Hangout topic has helped you today. I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm here for another 5 minutes. So if you do have any questions, now is your time to ask me, or feel free to ask them in the community tab as well. A bit later on this evening, I will be sending my weekly check-in. It's a few days late. I'm sorry, forgive me. We are the final 2 weeks before the move. Life is this at the moment. But I will be sending you a bit of a check-in, telling you what's new with my life in this period. And so if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me on that post as well. I'm recording a video straight after this for tomorrow. And you will, of course, have early access to that as always. And what else for me? I think this is it. So you've got just under 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But yes, also, if you have any ideas for what you would like me to talk about in April's Hangout, I'm thinking I'm probably going to talk about something connected with the move, but then maybe not, because you're going to have 2 videos all about the move in April. So tell me if there's something you'd like me to talk about. I mean, in the Hangout so far, we've spoken about um, what things have changed, how life has changed for people who plan to move to Italy in 2025. We've spoken about the mindset shifts. Today, we've spoken about the things I would have done differently if I were moving to Italy now. So I always try to dive a bit deeper into particular topics on this Hangout that can help you. But if you have something you would like me to talk about, feel free to tell me, because I really respect and value all of you who support my channel. It means the world to me. And so if I can give back by helping you to, I don't know, talk about something that's bothering you or a question you have about Italy, it would be really, really wonderful to do. So yes, we're in the final couple of minutes. I'm going to start to close things off here. I hope that you all have a lovely evening. It's like 6 o'clock here in Italy now. But have a lovely, lovely evening. And I hope to see you in April's Hangout. I will publish the dates for April's Hangout. I think it's going to be at the end of April, because the first couple of weeks of April are going to be a bit all focused on the move. I've got 2 behind the scenes videos to publish for you in April. So I really think at the end of the month, you will get the date you will have the date for the last, not for the last, for April's Hangout. I think this is the last thing I'm going to say, because my mind is all focused on the move in this period. Okay, have a lovely evening, everybody, and I'll see you in the April Hangout. Ciao.